All right, and we're back with our next speaker, Lydia. She is a polyglot and language mentor, and so she's going to actually introduce herself a little bit more and go into that. So I'm just going to go ahead and hand it over to Lydia. So welcome.
Thank you very much, Megan, and thank you also for the invitation to this really interesting conference. I've been enjoying it a lot. Okay, so I think the presentation is there. Hello, guys. Good to see you. I know some of you actually in person. I know some of the speakers at this conference in person. So I feel like we're almost meeting here like friends. I wish we could meet in a real life, but because of the situation, a virtual conference is actually a great idea too. And I was very glad to hear about this initiative, because I think it's wonderful that the proceeds from this conference help to fight people who are struggling because of the COVID situation, which I think is really amazing. So I'm happy to be part of this amazing project. So let me share my presentation with you. I hope you can see the slides. It should be working. I'll just check the chat, but I think everything is fine. Okay, so I want to talk to you about how to pick the best learning tools, but actually the real answer to this question will be different than what you would probably expect, but we'll get to that. Before we start, let me briefly introduce myself. As Megan said, I'm a polyglot. That means I'm a big language fan. I like learning languages one after another. I'm originally from Slovakia, which is my home country. And I started to learn the first language when I was 11. And then basically almost every 2 years, I learned a new language. And I'm trying to keep 7 of them on a fluent level. So this is my style of learning languages. I usually take a language, concentrate on it full time, and after 2 years, I take on a new language. And I've been doing this for 20 years. And well, if you start at the age of 11, that brings you to a few languages. I've also been a language teacher for 10 years. I taught various types of students, starting from primary school, then moving to secondary school, even university students, adults in language schools, in companies. So I have a lot of language teaching experience, but then I changed it after a few years and I became a language mentor. And this is what I do now full time. I have a company called Language Mentoring, and I don't teach people languages, but I help them to learn languages by themselves. That means that I even help people learn languages which I don't speak in person. And I will tell you some of the methods and some of the methodology that I use in this presentation. I'm not doing this by myself. I have an amazing team of my colleagues who are helping me help other people learn languages. We do online courses, I do some presentations, and together we are helping thousands of people learn languages every day. Besides that, some of you may know me as the former organizer of Polyglot Gathering, which I organized in 2017 and 2018 here in Slovakia, in Bratislava. And if you look at the picture, you'll recognize one of the speakers of this conference standing right next to me. Steve was also at some of our Polyglot Gathering events, and he had an amazing speech at the event. I'm really looking forward to his talk today as well. Some of you may also know me from some of the conferences that I've spoken at, or maybe you have seen my TED Talk, which I really still cannot quite believe, but it's getting a lot of attention online. It has been viewed by more than 7 million people by now. And in those 10 minutes, I basically give my best know-how, the secrets on how to learn a language. I will tell those secrets in this talk too, but if you want to watch something afterwards, then you may want to watch this TED Talk too. And good news for all of you guys. If you watch this till the end, you will learn where you will get a special present from me. I was thinking how to help people in the best way in the 30 minutes that I have. And I realized that I cannot tell you everything and all the secrets, so I have something special prepared for you. And I will tell you at the end of of my talk, I will tell you where you will get that special present. Okay? So let's start. I cannot have any talk about language learning without mentioning the 4 pillars of my language learning philosophy. And I honestly believe this is what it takes to learn a language. When I thought about what helped me learn all those languages and what helped all the polyglots that I know learn all those languages, it basically comes down to a few principles which we have in common. And these are the following. First of all, when you're learning a language, you need to make sure you have fun in one way or another. It doesn't need to be the most fun experience in your life, but it needs to be enjoyable, at least a little bit. I see a lot of people struggling with language learning because they are using materials which they can't stand, or they think that they should definitely learn with this book and, go through this, even though they cannot stand looking at the book. I think there are so many ways, so many methods how we can learn languages out there that it really is quite simple to choose something that you like at least a little bit. It should be materials which you like, enjoy reading about or listening to, and it should be methods, apps, whatever you use to learn a language. You should make sure that you like it at least to a part. The second pillar is having a lot of contact when learning a language. It has been mentioned by some of the speakers today. It does take some time to learn a language, and it's not possible overnight or within 2 weeks. And it surprises me how some people think that if they spend 5 minutes a day with an app, in 2 weeks, they are disappointed that they don't speak the language yet. It just doesn't work like this. And anyone who's ever learned a language seriously or to a good level will tell you that it is not possible to learn a language within a few weeks. It requires more time. So you need a lot of contact. And it has been mentioned as well by other speakers that the only way to learn how to speak is to speak a lot. You really need to make sure you have contact with the language in the way which will help you use it in practice. The third pillar is using effective methods. This basically means that speaking or tying it up to the thing which I've just mentioned, if you want to speak a language well, you need to make sure you practice speaking a lot, and you need to make sure that your methods are effective. If you want to learn to understand people because they speak in a language and you don't understand when native speakers are speaking, you need to make sure you practice listening a lot. And again, there are a lot of methods how you can go about them, and we will go into more details in this talk about the methods. And finally, I believe it is very important to find a system in one's learning. And this is, again, something that many people struggle with. They are excited at the beginning, they want to learn a language, but then they don't make any plan, they don't make it systematic at all. And after a few weeks, they usually give up and they feel like a failure, and they usually think, oh, it's because I don't have a language talent. But actually, what many of them were missing is a system. Now, this conference is about online language resources, about modern resources that we have available everywhere on the internet, and there are a lot of them. And I believe the biggest problems that people struggle with, and hopefully that also relates to you guys watching this conference, is that people don't know how to really use the methods that they have available, or what methods to pick and how to apply them in practice, and system. So in my talk, I would like to mention these two pillars. We will go into more details, and I want to provide practical tips for you on how you can make sure that your language learning is effective, that you use a method which is really, really efficient for you, and also how to make your language learning systematic. Because language learning is a long-term process. It's something that takes some time, and in order to get to the end of it, to get to some visible results, we need to make sure we motivate ourselves somehow to deal with language learning every day, to find the time for it. And I believe being systematic is the key to that. So let us now start with the third pillar, with methods first, and afterwards we'll have a look at the system in language learning. Okay. So the question is how to make sure your language learning is effective. Many people ask me the question, which app should I choose? Which method, which resource, is this app better than the other one? Well, my answer may surprise you, but it doesn't really matter which app you choose, because I believe the most important thing is how you use that app, how you use the resource which you decided to use. And the good news is that almost any resource out there is a very good resource for you if you use it effectively and if you make the most of this resource. Now, what does it mean? To make the most of the app, I believe it's not enough to just do what, for example, an app with some, let's say, language practice, with some examples, with some maybe grammar sentences, or usually apps are about vocabulary, practicing vocabulary. If they only want you to do some exercises, matching some words, or translating, or completing some sentences with some words, if that's the only thing they want you to do, and you only do that, you are not taking or using the full potential of this language learning resource. What I believe is very important, to do some after work with the app. Now, what do I mean by that? I want to tell you about 3 concrete methods, which I believe personally that are the best to learn vocabulary. And I believe that everyone should include one of them in one way or another into their language learning. Because it is not enough if we just keep encountering some words. For example, when we read a text or we listen to something, sometimes we hear a word which is new to us. But if you don't do anything with that word, it will not get stuck in your brain, and it's very difficult to keep it long term. So you will keep encountering new words in new texts and materials, but they will not stay in your long-term memory. And this is, I believe, the goal of language learning. We want to be able to use it in practice, right? Not just know that, I've seen this word somewhere. We want to really be able to use it. Now, what are the 3 methods? The first of them, I'm sure most of you have heard about it or probably use it, is flashcards, paper flashcards. Have you ever tried using that, or have you ever heard about this? It's pretty simple. You create little cards of expressions or words or phrases. One side of the card is in your language, the other is in your target language, and then you make a stack of the cards, just like in the picture. Now, when you test yourself, you take the first card, the red one, and you test yourself. You look at the word or expression and you think, oh, what is this in French or Spanish, whatever you're learning? You say it out loud, check it, and if you were right, you put the card at the very back of this stack, right? Because it was an easy expression. If it was more difficult, you put it closer to the beginning, because then you will take another card and another card and another card, and you want to make sure that the difficult words get repeated more frequently. So if you don't know it again, after 5 minutes, you will put it again at the beginning, and after 5 minutes, the card will come again and it will test you. This is a very simple explanation of the spaced repetition system, which I believe is a very effective way how to learn anything, not just languages, but it's really very efficient for language learners. So what you can do is you can create your own flashcards, cut out in paper. I like to use colorful pieces of paper like the ones in the picture, which I use for Swahili. And they can obviously be just simple pieces of paper. If you want to keep it digital, you can do the same with apps, flashcard apps. These are just some examples of free flashcards apps, such as Enki Droid for Android, Flashcards Deluxe, or Brainscape for iPhone users. And you can do the same just without any paper and writing in hand. So you create your own flashcards and you keep revising every day for at least 5 or 10 minutes. You will see how these words will get stuck in your long-term memory. It works really, really well. And my absolutely favorite method, which I don't know if you've heard about, but I really love using it, and I also love talking about it because it's helped so many people I know. It's called the Gold List method. And this is a very interesting way how to learn a vocabulary by writing it down into a notebook and distilling or making filtration of this vocabulary after 2 weeks, rewriting it on another part of the notebook, basically on the other side of the paper. And it's really interesting because you don't do anything with the words for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, you find out that you somehow remember about 30% of those expressions. And I remember when I heard it for the first time, I was like, that's nonsense. This cannot work. That's weird. But then I tried it and I was absolutely amazed that it really does work in this way. You write a list. After 2 weeks, you remember 30% of them. You rewrite the words which you didn't know. And after 2 weeks, again, you remember 30% of those words which you already distilled from the previous list. In this talk, I have no space to explain this method in practice, but Dasha from my team is watching this conference. So Dasha, if you could please include an ebook, if anyone is interested, about the Gold List method, which we wrote about the details of the Gold List method, which, by the way, is a method by my friend David James. I did not create the method. I'm just a big fan and user of it. So Dasha, if you could please include the link, and if you are interested, you can download the free ebook and start using it. It's really simple. It's for free. It works like magic. So I hope you like using it too. So these 3 great methods to process vocabulary, I believe, are really crucial for anyone who wants to learn a language really well. And what I'm suggesting here is that whatever app you use, or it doesn't matter if it's a podcast or if it's a book, if it's a magazine, whatever resource you use, make sure you actually process the vocabulary afterwards. That means, let's say you have an app where you play around with some words, it gives you some new expressions, and you match them, or you translate, you practice pronunciation, whatever the app is about. Make sure you actually spend extra time after working with the app to write down maybe 5 or 10 new expressions, which you will put into one of these 3 methods to process vocabulary. Pick just one. Don't do all 3 of them at once, okay? Just pick one of them. It doesn't matter which one. All of them are effective. It just depends on what you prefer. And make sure you put these expressions into this vocabulary processing method right away. And then every day spend 10 minutes reviewing the vocabulary which you learned previously. It will make your experience of learning with the app so much more deep, profound, and effective that you will feel. I believe you will feel really motivated to keep on learning using the app that you chose. If you have a transcript for whatever materials you're using as audio, then that's perfect, because you can use them again in a much more profound way. An example of an app where you could use it is Coffee Break Languages, that I personally also loved using for learning French. Mark from Coffee Break Languages had a talk before me, so I believe his app is perfect for this. Or also the LingQ app by Steve Kaufman, who is also going to speak later on today. These are just examples. You can use it for any podcast out there or anything which has a transcript. Now, what do I mean by processing the vocabulary? First of all, you just listen to whatever material you're listening to. Let's say it's a podcast episode, or it's a short text within the podcast, which is in the target language. You just listen to it. You don't read anything. In the second round, you listen and read at the same time. So you listen again, you've listened to it once, you listen again for the second time, and now you read the transcript, right? Afterwards, you read and look for interesting phrases. So now you put away the audio recordings and you just work with the text more intensively. And this is the effective part of learning any language. This is where the effective methods start to work. Afterwards, you process the phrases into your flashcards or gold list or anything else. You can just write them on a piece of paper. Just make sure you review them in a regular spaces. So this is again an example how you can work with any material out there. And again, it doesn't matter what you choose. Work with it in a more profound and effective way. I also have a few vocabulary learning principles for you, which I want to share. Some of them might be new to you. Some of them maybe you've heard already before. So what I would like you to do to try next time that you work with vocabulary is to collect your own vocabulary. Do not just follow any set of vocabulary in a book, or if you work with a podcast which you like, and there are some words which you are not sure whether you would like to use or if you really need them, skip them. Okay, feel free to be picky about your vocabulary. The way I learn languages, I always pick the words which I want to learn, and then later on I will learn other words. It doesn't matter. You don't need to cover all the words which are in the language resource that you're using. The second thing is always work with words in context. By that I mean, don't try to just write one word which you encountered somewhere, but try to write it in a little sentence that you found in the text or in the podcast, wherever. For example, don't just write to send, but write I sent a letter. Right? The combination of send and a letter, it will be much easier for your brain to actually remember this. So working in context is much more important. Reviewing much more than you learn new stuff. This is something I've already mentioned. So many people make the mistake of always trying to learn new words. They are excited about going through new stuff and new chapters in a book and just new words, but they're not reviewing the older words. And that's when they're not sticking in your long-term memory. So it's much more important to review than to learn new stuff. That's much more efficient. Also, whenever I test myself or I learn any vocabulary, I make sure I test myself from my mother tongue into the target language. So I don't only check my passive comprehension, whether I know whether I understand the word or the expression, but I always make sure I see it in Slovak first, think about it, how to say it in French, check on the flashcard, and like, okay, now I know this phrase, I can use it. So I always test myself in this direction. And then I also learn out loud if possible. This is not always possible, but if you're alone and if you can do it at least 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, it's very, very efficient. And my final tip for you about vocabulary and about working with methods is also work with words that you understand passively. For example, you see the word like conference, a cognate word, which in many European languages is very similar, like in Slovak it's konferencia. So I would see conference and I would think, oh, I know this word, it's easy. But actually the trick is to put it into your language learning resource or method nevertheless, because it's very important that you check whether you can also say it actively and not just understand it passively. Okay, so these are my best tips for you if you are working with any vocabulary. And again, let me just stress, it's much more important how you work with a given set of words, vocabulary, than which app you choose or which resource, which method you apply. Okay, and now let us get to the second part, or to the fourth pillar, which is about learning systematically. I don't know about you guys, but this is how I feel learning all of my languages all the time. No exception. I always have some ups and downs in my motivation. And sometimes I feel super excited, like, yay, I want to learn Russian. I feel so excited. And then after a few weeks, I feel, oh, this is too difficult. I'm never going to understand this language. The grammar is complicated. There are just too many words. It's all written in a different way than it's pronounced. And I feel frustrated. I want you to know that this is perfectly normal to feel like this, and everybody feels like that. I don't know a single polyglot, and I know several dozens or hundreds of them rather. I don't know anyone who would never feel frustrated with a language, okay? So we just need to accept that this thing happens and it's okay. But the question is, how do we make sure we use our ups to make sure that our downs are more doable or more pleasant, and that we get over them so that we get back to the up period where we feel super motivated. My tip for you is, whatever way you work with a language, whatever app method you use, doesn't matter. Just make sure you turn it into a habit and you commit to doing it regularly. This is where we get to the systematic part of learning a language. Let me give you a few examples how a systematic learning plan works, okay? Let's say you want to work on your vocabulary. You found a wonderful app, you love it, it's fun, it's nice. Make sure you decide in advance how often you're going to use it and how much time you'll spend with it. For example, and these are all just examples, okay? I'm going to use this app 6 times a week for 10 minutes, and then for 20 minutes, I'm going to process the vocabulary the way I've described in the first part of this talk, okay? So I'm going to write down the words and actually, check their meaning in a dictionary, make sure I write the whole phrase, make sure I test myself from my mother tongue into the target language. But I really need to commit myself that I will do this 6 times a week. This is very, very important, especially when you're doing it in the up part of your motivation, because then the down part comes and you will not want to do it. You will just not feel motivated. Speaking, if you decide to practice your speaking, let's say twice a week for 60 minutes with a tutor, such as from a Chatterbug or whatever tutor you have, a friend, you speak to yourself, it doesn't matter. Make sure you schedule it and put it in your calendar. It's very, very important. It will help you overcome those rough times. With grammar, maybe you want to do 4 times a week, 20 minutes of grammar exercises. Listening, you decide to do it 7 times a week, 30 minutes while you are walking or doing something else, using your downtime, as Mark pointed out. Or with reading, you do it 5 times a week, 20 minutes, and then you look for useful vocabulary. Again, these are just examples. The particular setup depends on your time possibilities and how serious you are about your language learning. But I believe it's really, really crucial that you create this plan in advance. And if maybe you feel motivated to learn languages right now at this conference, then use it and make sure you write it down, make a plan, and and then track your learning. This is the third part that we're going to get to. So the 3 steps to learn systematically, it's very simple and it really works amazingly. First of all, pick 2 or 3 methods. Don't try to work with 15 different apps because your friends told you they're all amazing. Just stick to 1, 2, or 3 methods. For me, ideally 3. For example, one of them would be for vocabulary. One method would be for speaking. So let's say I have a tutor for my sessions or a tandem partner. And a third one would be maybe for listening, okay? At that time, I don't worry about grammar, writing, pronunciation, and everything else, because later on, after 1 or 2 months, I can change those methods, okay? But right now, I want to focus on just 2 or 3 of them. This is very important because it will keep your focus on something that can keep improving. Create a learning plan. Use the time when your motivation is high. It may be right now, it may be next week, who knows, but make sure you use that time and ask yourself, how many times a week do I want to do this? How much time per day do I commit myself to work with this app? And then, this is the secret sauce, keep track of your learning. It will keep you so motivated when you know that there is a calendar or a piece of paper on your wall, or there is a tracking app that will, that you will always track every day that you did those 10 minutes of listening and those 15 minutes of grammar, whatever it is. And we are now getting to the present that I promised to you at the beginning, because I actually want to help you do this very thing. Plan your learning and track it. I believe these are very simple steps that can incredibly help you learn a language effectively. So my present for you guys is the language planner for 2020, which my team and I have put together. It's a beautiful, colorful, it's an Excel sheet which you can print, or you can just use it digitally. It's up to you. And you can download it for free on the website languagementoring.com/chatterconf, the name of this conference. And you just type in your email and we will send it to you by email. So I hope this helps you. There is also an instruction manual. It's very short, very simple. And once you start using it, you will see that it will be much simpler for you to actually learn the language when you track it, when you watch how you're doing. Okay, so that's basically it. I have a few more slides ready, but I believe we're out of time, and I want to make sure that Megan or anybody else from the team, if there are questions, I would love to answer those too.
That was really great. Thank you so much, Lydia. We do have a few questions for you, so let's see how many we can get in here. So the first one is, what motivated you to learn so many languages, and why these languages specifically?
Okay, I always had a specific reason for each of the languages. I don't learn languages just for the sake of learning languages. And so, for example, with French, I needed that for my PhD thesis, because a lot of the stuff that I needed to write about my topic was only available in French. So that was a legitimate reason. Or with Russian, for example, I really wanted to travel, do the Trans-Siberian Express from Moscow to Mongolia. So in order to do that for 2 years, I learned Russian really actively, and then only used Russian on the whole journey. And it was amazing.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. And the next couple questions are about language maintenance. So one question is to please tell us more about your experiences and thoughts regarding regression and maintenance with language.
Right. So these are actually the slides that I have prepared, but unfortunately there is not much time to go into detail. I believe that there is a certain level where if you get to that level, it's many polyglots call it the comfortable fluency level, or a very good B2 level where you use a lot of the language in speaking. You will not have to keep the language in a very active way. So for example, I myself, I don't practice my languages in a normal life. I use 2 years to learn a language, and when I get it to that level of comfortable fluency, I basically only read one book a year, maybe, or I talk to someone when I meet them. But this is not like a routine where every day I would go through stuff. So I believe the key is to make sure you reach that level. And if you don't, then you will always, whenever you stop learning for a few weeks or months, you'll probably get back to almost the beginner level. So I believe this has to do with the level you decide to learn a language.
Yeah. And the last quick question is regarding flashcards. Somebody was wondering if it's better to actually write your own flashcards out rather than downloading them or something like that.
Absolutely. Thank you for this question, because I forgot to mention this is absolutely crucial. And I always tell my students that Go ahead and try it with someone else's flashcards. It will not work for you, but you need to have the experience yourself. You will not believe me before you do it. It's absolutely important. This is about picking your own vocabulary, not just taking someone else's vocabulary. It's so much more efficient that I really recommend everyone to try both ways, and you will decide based on the results. I know what the results will be.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. That was super insightful, and we really appreciate having you here today.
Thank you, Megan. It was a pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Right. And we'll be back with the next speaker in just a moment.